Get ready to get sticky. Sticky Situations is sponsored by Corona Crush. Corona Crush is creating Jewish couples always. Join the Facebook group. Just search Corona Crush and look out for virtual speed dating events happening every other week. They're 100% free and 100% Jewish.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Sticky Situations. I'm your host, Rachel, which obviously you already know because I'm unforgettable. Everyone, right now, whatever platform you're listening on, if you are not already following or subscribed, please go do so. Please also give us a 5-star rating and a glowing review. Go like Sticky Situations page on Facebook, follow Sticky Situations Pod on Instagram, follow Sticky Situations Pod on TikTok, join our Sticky Situations Loop group. Yeah, that's a fun one. Go join it. And the link is in the episode description. And yeah, if you would like to be a guest on my podcast, you can. I have applications in the socials, in the Corona Crush post also, or just send me an email or a DM on Instagram at Sticky Situations Pod, or an email at stickysituationspod@gmail.com. Same goes for if you want to date any of my single guests. Just send me a message, let me know who you're interested in, and I will do my best at trying to set it up for you. Let's get right into it. So today I have an extra special guest. Please welcome my friend Yaacov. Yaacov, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, yeah, thank you for having me. It's great to
Of
be here.
course. Thank you for being here. Okay, Yaacov, before we get into all your stories and insights and everything, can you tell me and my listeners just a few identifying things so we know like where you're coming from, dating wise, all of that, just to give context? Can you tell us your age, location, relationship status, and religious denomination?
All right, so hey guys, my name is Yaakov. I'm 28. I'm currently single. I live in Canada, and I'm religious. I could say Chabad chill is where I'm at.
Okay, cool. That's different. I don't know if I've had anyone who's Chabad on before. So we love that for us. We love different perspectives, different stories, different everything. Okay, let's jump right in. Yaakov, do you want to start with some stories or whatever you want to start off by sharing?
Yeah, okay, sure. So I think one of the most interesting stories that really stuck out to me, I think it was both my most fortunate and unfortunate story that happened. So basically what happened was is that I was working for a company and I was going to work one day. And so I saw this Jewish girl, like she waved at me. She looked religious, right? I was religious. I'm religious. I didn't really make anything of it. I was like, okay, yeah, sure. It's kind of odd, but you know. So I ended up going, to work. And later that day at work, there were some offices. I was in the main floor doing my own thing. And so like she comes out of one of the offices, and I was like, oh, I just like put like one and one is two together. It's like, okay, that's interesting. Like she's actually works where I work, that's cool. And then fast forward towards like the end of the day, and it just so happens to be like by pure coincidence that we were kind of like walking out of like the building together at the same time at the end of work. So I was like, you know what? Why not? Like, I'll just like shoot my shot, like I'll ask her, start talking to her, whatever. So I did that. I was like, hey, I know from the bus, that was you. Okay. And so, she was friendly, cordial. It seemed like, pretty good. There was nothing off or anything like that. And so we started talking, and so we ended up walking like towards like the metro station, and we get into the metro station. We keep conversation. I don't quite remember since it's been quite a few years ago already, probably at least 7 or 8 at this point, like what we talked about. It was just chill. And so like we end up like both getting off like the same like metro stop, and then we get out, we're still talking, and then we end up getting on this like the same bus. And like for like half a second, I was like, oh, okay. So we end up going to the same bus, and we keep on talking, and then we get off at the exact same stop. And so like at that moment, I was like, I had like some alarm bells go off. I was like, oh no, like she's probably thinking like I'm stalking her or something like that. Literally at the first end, first shot. I was like, oh, hey, like, before you go or anything, I'm not stalking you. I literally live like 5 minutes away. I promise you, I live like 5 minutes away. And like her reaction was like, regular, like she was smiling, like, you know, like she understood whatever, and she ended up going her way to like left, I think. I went to the right. I was like, to myself, I was like, she probably like lives 5 minutes away. And like after that, I was like, okay, it's, you know, like it's all good. I mean, like it's great. I mean, what were the odds that like she was living like 5 minutes away probably from like where I'm living. We both go to like the same, you know, like work environment. And like I knew that my work was really seasonal. So I, you know, like I'd probably, you know, maybe like try something to, you know, coworkers, that kind of thing, whatever, you know, it wouldn't be that kind of thing anymore afterwards. But you know, I was like, that's like a great coincidence. But then what happened was literally the next day, I come back to work, and like, you know, I was like wanted to chat her up or whatever, thing like that. And like it was like literally like stone cold. It was like literally like she was literally not interested. No, no, no. I was like, it took me a little bit to figure it out. I was like, okay, I better just not, you know, do anything, pursue anything. You know, I didn't want to be that person that tries to push anything or push any boundaries. And so like I just left it at that. But I was like always like wondering myself, like, what in like the world happened? Like I just like couldn't figure it out. And like my only likely answer was like what I was telling her. I was like, maybe I should have never told her that, like, you know, like I wasn't like stalking you or anything like that. Like but it was such a massive coincidence. I didn't want her to think like anything else of it. You know, I was like, it literally just was what it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, okay, I guess my question is, when you told her I'm not stalking you, did you say it in like a jokey tone, or did you say it in like a really serious, like really
Um,
seriously?
it was, I think, a mix of both. I think it was like just a mix of both. Because like at that moment, I was like really like, panicking. I was like, oh no, like what do I do? Like I didn't want her to like think I was like literally following her home, right? It's like it literally was not that. It just like never even occurred to me that like I live in an area where it's like there are, you know, Jewish people, but there's not really religious people. So let's say, for example, within a 5 minute walking distance, you'd have to walk at least 15, 20 minutes out or whatever. But like if you're that close to like the like that particular bus stop, you must live about like 3, 5 minutes away, right? So yeah.
So interesting. Maybe she was stalking you.
I don't think so. I was definitely like not gonna like do anything afterwards. I just really could not figure out like what really happened. But that was like really unfortunate.
Did
Yeah, sure.
did you say anything in the conversation with her that might have like indicated like
As far as like, I mean, like I don't really remember at all we talked about, but like it didn't seem like there was anything that like would have been off or controversial. I mean, there was nothing like we talking about politics or anything like that or religion or whatever, what have you. It was just like, you know, playing normal conversation. So like I was like really like replaying it. I wasn't like obsessively replaying it, but I was like replaying it in my mind. I was like, what could have like possibly gone wrong? I was like, this like might be like the only thing that was going that went off that time.
it's so interesting. I guess like I don't know. Maybe she went
Yeah.
home and like internet stalked you and I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know.
No, I have no idea on that
Or maybe
one.
she just got like really strong vibes from you and she wasn't interested.
Could be. It's
That could
like you
be
just like
too.
turn on a dime. Like, what did I say? What did I do? Did I do anything wrong? I was like, couldn't figure it out. Like, really couldn't figure it out.
Yeah. That's so weird.
Yeah.
Also, you would think, I don't know, I always get excited when I see like Jews in the office. Like, I don't know, I want to try to be their friend. It's funny, like one of my friends now, actually, I always give him a hard time because when we used to work at the same company and he started a year after I did, and I was at the ho the work holiday party, me and one of my other Jewish friends, and we see this
Mhm.
guy in a yarmulke and we like go over and try to start chatting with him because we're like, "Oh, another Jew, like this is so fun. We're
Yeah, yeah.
Jewish friends." And he wanted nothing to do with us. And then after he like we kept seeing him around at events and he kept wanting nothing to do with us. But then I actually became friends with him in real life, not at work. And I always give him a hard time about how when we worked at the same company, he wanted nothing to do with me and my other Jewish friend. But
Yeah, you know, I was thinking about if let's say we're coworkers or something like that, and maybe there would like something, you know, it would stop it. But I can go with a different kind of story. It's just like I think I want to like offer some perspective on shotguns, right? Some people use them, some people don't, right? So, but from my experience, I've had like a number of crazy instances, specifically like with bars, like with one, like we call a matchmaker for those who are unfamiliar with the term, right? So basically what happened was is that I some other matchmaker gave me contact with this person, whatever, and I contacted that matchmaker. I'll just say she was a she. We'll just put it that way. And so her, I could say, gimmick, if you will, was you pay me like $500 up front, which is a very unusual thing, by the way, in the matchmaking world. Like no one really does that. Everyone like likes to get paid afterwards, but she's like, you pay me $500 up front. You sign a contract with me. I give you 2 girls every 2 weeks or something like that, where you can look into and stuff like this, right? Of course, obviously, everyone should know that it's, those girls obviously agree that they can be passed on to someone else, right? It's not like anything other than that. And you get to look into them, and that's basically like the agreement. And then if you do get engaged or whatever, and then eventually married, like both of you just hand in a gift, and all's great. So I was like, okay, like I'll take a dive in this one. I'll take a plunge and see like where this goes. But it was like an absolute nightmare. It was like an absolute nightmare. Like the first and foremost was like after like a few weeks, like she was just basically not even keeping up with her basic agreement, which was like just giving out like 2 girls with their resumes or whatever so that I can look at them and stuff like this. And like she just was completely unresponsive, the typical kind of like shotgun thing I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with. But there was like a number of other things that were just flat out crazy. One of the things that I distinctly remember was that she would constantly gaslight me, and to a certain extent, because like, for example, let's say we make some kind of agreement, like, oh hey, like, well, let's talk about something or whatever, and so she'd be like, oh yeah, okay, so let's talk about it in a week's time. And then like a whole week and a half would pass by. I'm like, hey, like we agreed, and she'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like I never agreed to any of this or anything like that. And just be like, hey, like what the heck, right? Or and that was not even like the worst of her offenses. Egregious offense would be like her actual gimmick was like, I can talk to girls. They might actually agree that they want to go out with you, stuff like this. She was like, you think you could persuade people? And I was like, okay, yeah, you do that. I'm not really expecting anything from it per se, except for the actual contract. But that's very important to keep in mind here, that I was never like under any kind of impression that girls are going to be saying yes just because they're working with her. Like if they send my profile to them, like that was literally not at all what I was thinking. I was just getting upset because what happened is, let's say something like, oh, she sent the thing. I'm like, okay, this kind of like this is pretty cool. Like this girl is cool, right? So let's try her out. And so so she would be like, okay, yeah, I'll ask. And then she says the girl reportedly said yes. I was like, oh, okay. So the way she does things is like, she'll hand the girl's number over and then we'll just like work it out ourselves. That's also quite a bit unorthodox, but I was like flexible person. And so I was like, like, why not? Let's try that. Like I'll go with that. But the number just never came. And so I was like, literally all you had to do was just send me a number. Just send me a number. I'll work everything out myself, even though under most Shadchanim, the way they normally function is that they're constantly in between. They constantly do everything. They do all the setups, the meetups, and everything like this. But I was more than happy to do all the work. But she just didn't even do it. And so I was getting really frustrated. But then when I actually looked into things, I ended up realizing that the girl had never said yes to anything. She was never even contacted or anything like that or whatever. And so I was just like kind of like sitting there like, what is going on? Like what in God's name is going on with this? I didn't know what to make of it. And again, I was getting upset, not because the girl had said no. I got upset because here she says that the girl had said yes. So she lied to me about it, right? And said all she had to do was send a number, and she couldn't even send a number over, right? And I was going to do all the work myself, and I just was not getting the number. And one of the problems, especially with many shotguns, including herself, was that she just couldn't fulfill simple tasks like make a phone call someone up, get an agreement, or what have you. There were situations in where the girl was like, this person who? And I was like, what? So you don't know this shotgun? Like, how is this making any sense? Like how did she pull any profiles? And some people knew the shotgun, some people didn't know the shotgun. Sometimes she threw it on like a third party and said, oh, this shotgun, I'm working with that shotgun on this. And I'm like, who in the flip is this other shotgun? Like, I have absolutely no idea. Like I was like, I thought you were just like operating solo. Most people operate solo, right? There's nothing like no such thing that this kind of thing happens, but that's what she was doing. And like funny enough, like I think one of the names she ended up throwing out, I finally ended up through like later on, like finding that other shotgun or whatever. I was like, oh, that's like who she was like referring to. But then when I actually asked the shotgun, I was like, oh, hey, and then and the shotgun's like, yeah, we never collaborated on that. And I was like, what? That was, I don't know. I think like all these things to me, I'm trying not to say it like with like trying to yell about it, but it's like you like we're like really be loud about it. But it's like to me, it was just like really insane. Like that was like literally insane. It might be hard for like those listeners that are not familiar with Shadchanim, how the system works and stuff like this, but those who do, I'm sure would find something more than odd with what was going on. One other thing I
Yeah,
think that
that
was
sounds like a
really with
scam.
this. Yeah, it was like my siblings on this is like a total sham. And it
Did
like
you ask her for your
at
money
some
back?
point, yeah, at some point it got so bad that at some point like I was like, hey, I'm gonna take you like with like the Jewish court over this, and I was like really going to do it. And at some point, after all this pressure, like I was doing constant pressure on her and stuff like this, and then she like finally like gave in and gave my money back, and that was like a
Oh, good.
real miracle in of itself. Yeah, I mean, like I was expecting I was never gonna see my money ever again, and like I would, I don't even know why she could have like probably severed ties like a long time ago, and like she completely ghosted me, but for some reason we actually kept in contact until I severed things off or had to really in some extent like aggressively sever things off. But yeah, that was just I don't even think I managed to really cover everything. That was just some of the things I could say that was really just going on with this exact shotgun and what she was doing.
Do you know other people who had used her in the past?
No, actually.
Like, how'd you
It
find
was,
her?
oh, like I said, like in the beginning, you shotguns often pass you off to other matchmakers. And it's like, oh, I have this person's contact info, you can use them, blah, blah, blah. And so like it would be kind of like this like the life cycle of a shotgun, where it's like basically you call them up, introduce yourself, Shotgun's like, oh, hey, great, whatever, send your resume, etc. Then they ignore you, then you call them up. And at some point, fairly quickly, they're like, oh, hey, I can't help you by this other person that may be able to help you. Let me give you their contact info. And so then you could take their contact info, contact them, and the whole cycle repeats itself. So it was kind of like a snowball effect. So at some point, there was this guy, he's like, oh, hey, this person, and that was her. And so I ended up contacting her and going from there. But yeah, it was like just total insanity. Like I said, we didn't even really cover everything that she was doing. I think one other important thing just to be mentioned before we move on to next topics is that probably at least half of the girls had no idea who she was. And I was like, but how? Like, how is this even like shouldn't like anyone be concerned about this? Because like girls are often concerned about like where their profiles are getting passed around, who who's passing around to, who's being passed to, etc. And I was like, it just like totally blew my mind how this was actually possible, but it actually was.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like a scam. Like, I
Yeah.
hope they find, I hope nobody else is using this person. I don't know. I think to charge money like that up front is ridiculous. Like, I understand that you're you're taking time and all of this. Like, it kind of reminds me, I mean, she's actually reputable. I'm not going to say her name, obviously, but
Mhm.
there is a Shah Khan who she's reputable. She's actually set up a few of my friends with their now husbands. And but she comes from a community that's like very close to my hometown community. So she was at one of my friends' weddings who she had helped set up. And my mom happened to actually be sitting at the table with her because it's one of my like close friends from home. So my mom was like asking her about like helping me. Like I think my friend had met her husband through one of like this woman's events or whatever. They probably gave her a shotgun gift, but like and paid the event fee, but I don't think she was like I'm about to say it like the money, it's ridiculous. But so my mom was talking to her and she's like, "Oh, can you help my daughter? Like that's her." like pointing me out, whatever.
Yeah.
And she quoted my mom like a crazy price. Like, and the prices might have even changed because this was a few years ago. She wanted to charge for the basic package, it was $1,200 a month. And for the more advanced package was $2,500 a month. I told my mom if she wanted to pay that much money, she could pay my rent. Like, no, thank you. I'd rather stay single. Like, honestly, it's thievery. Like, it's robbery. Like, you're taking advantage. I don't know. This topic of conversation actually came up at one of my Shabbat meals this week because, like, I mean, you get a bunch of I had an all girls meal, and you
Mhm.
get all the girls together, and everyone's talking about all this stuff. And honestly, the problem is with the shut system. And it's just like these people are taking advantage of people in their most vulnerable times. Like, I don't know, like we all want to get married. Well, kind of. I don't know. I go back and forth depending on
Mhm.
the day. But like we all want to get married and we're all single and like we're all trying our best to find someone, and you're taking people at their like this is something that you can't really do anything about. Like it's not up to us. Like you can make yourself the best version of you that you can make that you can make yourself, and you can network, you could go to a million events, you could go to everything trying to meet a million people, but like you can't really help where like you can't help meeting your person. Like you have no idea who that's going to be. Like you can meet one person every year or like 1,000 people every week and still like it doesn't matter. It's not really up to us when we find that person. So, and these shotguns are there to help, quote unquote, help us, but honestly, they do more harm than good, and they just try to take advantage of people. They're trying to get their money. I don't even know what they want. Like I really don't think this should be a job where people get paid to do it. Like I understand like giving a gift to a shotgun is written in the Torah somewhere, but that's different. You shouldn't be doing it for the money. Like when I try to set my friends up, I don't need the money. It's not for the money. I want to actually help people. I want to see people that
So
I know and care about.
I do want to jump in for that. I'll quickly
Yeah.
say what was extremely ironic because you're just saying this. And what she told me, the whole reason why she started like charging and asking for gifts and stuff like this is because literally she used to set up her friends for free. And at the wedding, she would get zero recognition. And so like so it's like extreme opposite now. And yeah, it's like really like
Which is
you really like need that. I
crazy.
mean, maybe at something you would say, hey, I can get a thank you, maybe, right? But like to go as far as be like, hey, I want to be like the center of attention. I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's
And
like
like
the people who only give tzedakah to have their name put on like
a
plaque
plaque.
somewhere.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
when I give money to charity, like I don't want my name anywhere. Like I'm
mhm,
doing it because like this is a good deed to do. I'm trying to
exactly.
do something nice. And like I think that the shotguns these days have blown it up into something that like it never should have been. And like
Yeah. I did want to make a comment by saying, and this is a great segue for the next part that we want to talk about, was that basically, especially now, it's been a few years, I really do most of the legwork myself. Like, it's not like a thing in where, like, a shotgun actually sends you anything. It's like, there are ways to get resumes. You go in groups and stuff like this. It's not like you're like hacking or anything like that. There are ways to get resumes, and you get resumes, and you do all the work yourself. So it's like I'm literally doing all the shotguns work for them, and then at the end of the day, it's like, let's say the girl, I mean, a lot of these girls don't exclusively work with a shotgun, right? So it's like so frustrating because then you're working with a shotgun, and it's like, oh yes, I have to give you $2,000 now, but you did almost, if this, let's say, would go through, you did almost nothing. Like I'm doing like all the legwork. I'm trying to find people and actually, like interview references and stuff like this. And you're just sitting there doing nothing. And so like it's like from like my end, I'd be like, so why would I be paying you anything? Like I we don't see the point. And like this is like, I think a great segue into talk about things. I think from my own male perspective, I would say that it's like, oh well, if you have, for example, that girls have like particular issues, let's say for example about resumes or making a decision right away and stuff like this, that was basically thrown on me. For example, like I'm given like absolutely no resumes whatsoever. Like it's like I'm like to myself every time I'm listening for girls to be like, oh, like the guys get a whole stack of resumes. I'm like, but where's my stack? Like I'm looking for that stack. Let me like open like a couple of drawers. Like where's that stack
I
coming
think you're
from?
talking to the
Uh,
wrong Shadchans. No, because
no,
honestly,
any shotgun, literally any.
every single guy I know, like we're also talking about that. I mean, listen, I date in the more modern world. I live in the more modern world, but
Mhm.
I do have friends who are a little less modern or a little more Mahmir where they're dating also the shuttle system. And I have guy friends, like whether it's actual physical resumes or like on Why You Connect, like all these guys have so many people lined up for them and like they can be as the most mediocre guys can be as picky as they want because like literally if you're somewhat cute and have a good job you get 100 girls like and
Yeah.
I don't know that from my own experience, but I know that from talking to these guys, and they walk around like they're God's gift to earth. We were talking about. I was with a group of girls, and we were talking about like a couple like specific guys. And listen, I think they're good guys, but I wouldn't say they're like the cream of the crop. Like should have 1,000 girls chasing after them, but apparently they are, and they say no to everyone because they can because they have for every girl they say no to, they have 10 more to choose from.
Right. So like basically what I was trying to like go with this was basically saying it's like this is kind of like in reverse. I don't know how many people find themselves in the very similar category, but actually to put it like a cork in this, I don't know, it's a like concept here. But anyway, the idea is like actually I don't care about a stack of resumes. It's like to me, it's like if I found like one person that works really well than like anyone else, it's like, I was not particularly picky. I mean, I have like my own requirements and stuff like this. It's not like a laundry list. Maybe it was about, I don't know, between 3 and 5 I can think of or something like that. And that's pretty much it. If you fit those requirements, it's like, it's great, especially one of them being that you have, like, we should be on like the same page religiously. I find that a very important thing to me. If you're, but I'll just leave that one. I'm not going to say the others, but I'll just say that, like, especially if you're just like on the same, you're more or less on the same page. Great. But it's like, I don't like need like 1,000 resumes clogging up my like my inbox or wherever whatever you get it. But I was just thinking that was like incredibly funny because I was like, yeah, well, okay, I'm listening to this. I was like, but like, where's my stack? I don't see where the stack is. The
I
stack
feel
is
like
doesn't
if
exist.
you were in New York, it's probably your location because
Yeah, yeah,
like
I'm assuming so.
If you're in New York, there's probably like I'm telling you, no matter the guy, unless there's something really wrong with the guy, like stacks and like dates on dates and dates and dates, like I don't know. They always like even my guy friends who complain to me, they're always going on dates. Like, I don't
Mm,
know. I have one guy friend who always complains to me about this. And like he called me today. He's like, "Oh yeah, wish me luck. I'm on my way to a date." I'm like, "Cool." Like you're always
mm.
complaining, but you always have dates lined up. He's constantly sending me like girls' profiles. He's like, "Do you think this is a good match for me?" And I'm like, "I don't know." Like, I'm telling you, even the most mediocre guys here have girls lined up. Yeah. I
Yeah, yeah.
guess it's in New
It
York.
was nothing to do with like a disagreement in the sense of like, oh, that's not true. I was just saying. Another thing, especially, is like where like all the girls are like 5 minutes to the side. That literally happened to me about like twice. And it was that exact shotgun. So she calls me and it was like, I have this person, da, da, da. I was like, you have like 5 minutes to decide if you want to say yes. Literally. No joke. This is not like some kind of hyperbole. It was literally 5 minutes to decide. I quickly lower the thing. And like most of the time, like if I actually do get someone, like there's hardly a time where I'd actually like say no. I think like most other guys like you like giving the girl a chance. I should say most other guys that are, modern or what have you, just to be specific. But it's like, give a chance. And that moment I was like, okay, what do I do? Read over it. And then I was like, okay, you know what? It's not quite. I mean, the shop was notorious of like really giving me stuff that was completely way off what I was looking for. But I was like, okay, you know what? I'll just go with it. But yeah, the funny thing was the girl was never actually informed about this whole situation. And so when she finally was, she said no. Uh, but yeah, so I was like listening. I'm just listening, and I'm like, yeah, like well, 5 minutes. Yeah, that sounds about right. That was like something that happened to me. So I definitely was the guy on the receiving end of that.
I mean,
What was I
usually in general, the guy will get the profile first to say yes or
saying?
no, and then only if he says yes does it get sent to the girl.
Yeah, yeah. It's most it actually was like really frustrating me like that because I was like, you know what? Why don't just reverse it? I'm sick of this. Like if the girl wants like not, and then like I'll look at it, chances are I'll probably say yes, so it'll start working out, as opposed to the other way around. Like the shot would constantly do it that way. And I was like, why? Like, and like I think I once like brought it up, and the shotgun was completely unwilling to do it. And I was like, but why? Like, why? Just why? I don't know. Maybe it's some kind of religious thing I'm unaware of. But
I
yeah,
think that's just how it is.
yeah, it's just how
Christians.
they, yeah, no one can
Just
really
how
like
it
think outside
is.
the box. Yeah,
But also, it's
yeah,
very on brand that the girls don't even know where their resumes are being sent to. Like, nobody
mm.
cares the girl's opinion. They'll just send the resumes wherever.
Yeah. I really don't know about that. Like, I have no idea like who's controlling what or what have you. But I was like just thinking to myself, it's like, especially in that scam situation, like that was just alarming. Like, how does this even happening? And on the complete other end, though, I was also thinking, it is like completely justified that you're concerned or you should be worried about like where your resume is going. But like since I was a guy, and this is like from the guy perspective, okay, so like that's why I'm gonna say this. But like I was like, oh come on, just like at some times, just please don't care. Like just sometimes. And I don't think it's possible for like girls to do that. I remember because I don't, like since I'm not a girl, so that's something that, I can't exactly perfectly wrap my head around. But just sometimes it's just like so frustrating because it's so frustrating because suppose let's say you don't have any access to any resumes or anything like this. So it's like, and then especially someone be asked like, oh well, why aren't you dating anyone? It's like, who do you want me to date? There's just air. I don't see anything. There's nothing in front of me. I don't know anyone that exists. Right? Like, how can I know that a girl exists if the resume is not sent to me? Right? It's like, oh, I may have a girl for you. It's like, okay, have a name? No, nothing at all. And then it's like, so you're just sitting there and you don't know what to do because there's nowhere to make the next step, no kind of progress to do anything like this. It just leaves you frustrated like that.
Usually, like, you can, I don't know, anytime that someone's like tried to set me up like that, they've
Mm-hmm.
asked, like, oh, can you send me your resume? Can I share it with the person?
Yeah, that much, yes. That's pretty much about it. Like, but then that person, like the girl, just say no, right? It's like you never knew a name, you never knew what they did, where they're from, anything, like nothing at all. I don't know. It felt so frustrating because if you do that, like imagine just happening like over and over and over again. You just see nothing. You're just told about some person that exists in the universe. You have no idea who they are, and then you'll never know anyway at the end of
So
the
why
day.
can't you ask? Why can't you just
I've
be like,
tried. The
oh,
shotgun will literally, yeah, they'll just like adamantly refuse to say give out any name, any kind of like information, anything.
well, that's a bad shotgun because the shotgun should
Oh,
be
but it's
asking,
everybody.
like, they should just be asking, like, the girl if they could give the resume.
Yeah, but I don't think it really gets that far. So like that's the thing.
Oh, so
And
like,
it's literally everybody. It's not like one person. It's like this is like when I'm like saying this is like a general trend. This is like the general like way people are like shotguns will function.
yeah, I don't know. I don't have such experience with shotguns. I have a few, like,
Yeah.
there's a few that I've spoken to and a few that have my resume and have tried to set me up and all of that, but like, it's not really my world.
Yeah, no, I
So,
hear you. No, I thought that was just something I think bringing a perspective on this, but that was just shotguns. There's also I have also some stuff like like I was listening to like some original podcasts. And I was like, oh, like taking a few pointers, like what guys might be doing that are not great. And I was like, you know what? Why not I just try to offer like a few pointers as well, in a respectful manner and stuff like this. Like, what are girls that are just not doing great? It's like guys are not doing great things. Okay, yes, that's 100% true. But like there's like a few things like girls just not doing great, and we
wait,
can get into that
before we get into that, let's take a quick break to hear a word from our sponsors,
for
and
sure.
then we can get into it when we come back. So we
Okay.
will be right back.
Sticky Situations is sponsored by Corona Crush. Are you tired of swiping on dating apps? Tired of guessing whether the cute guy or girl you keep seeing around is Jewish and or single? Then you need to run, not walk to join Corona Crush. Corona Crush is a Jewish organization working to create Jewish couples always. Corona Crush has over 30 confirmed engagements, over 22,000 members from all over the world, and has set up over 50,000 speed dates. Join the Corona Crush Facebook group and post yourself or have a friend post you and see who reaches out. Fill out the survey to sign up for virtual speed dating events happening every other week. Corona Crush is 100% free and 100% Jewish. Worst case, you end up with some stories of your own. Best case, you find the love of your life. Try it out today. Here on Sticky Situations, we tend to focus on bad dating stories, but sometimes dates do go well and lead to proposals and weddings. Who would have thought? And what do all of those require, you might be asking? Well, the answer is flowers. Who doesn't want flowers from someone they've been seeing? Don't forget, flower petals and bouquets needed for proposals. And that's even before all the flowers that go into weddings. Sticky Situations is sponsored by Primrose Flower Shop. In my opinion, Primrose is the coolest flower shop around and has the best customer service to fulfill all of your floral needs. Primrose offers a range of services from your basic bouquets to subscription services where you can get flowers delivered once a week. They deliver all over the tri-state area, including Manhattan. Primrose does weddings, bar and bat mitzvahs, and other simchas. I've personally been to a wedding where Primrose did the flowers, and the work they did was beyond gorgeous. Primrose additionally offers in-store proposals, including a romantic setup with candles and music. Primrose is located at 2922 Avenue M in Brooklyn, and the phone number is 929-376-9815. You can also follow Primrose on Instagram at PrimroseNY. So, if you can't get someone out of your head, buy them some flowers from Primrose. They'll either love it or they'll find you really creepy. But regardless, the flowers will be out of this world.
Okay, we're back, everybody. Okay, Yaakov, so you wanted to talk about things that you think girls aren't doing properly.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
hear this.
So
Just letting you know, any points I disagree with, I will argue with you.
sure, sure. So one of the things, this is like just a few pet peeves of mine, and it's like, to me, some things just like some common courtesy or other or something like that. And so, yeah, I thought, I just like pointed out, maybe some people like, oh, I didn't think about that. So one of the things is, let's say, for example, like we're setting up a date, right? It's a first thing, send a text, let's say, and then I send a text, and then you just jump off of WhatsApp. And it's like, I would send a text, I saw your things, I sent like respond right away, right? Because we're just trying to do some communication to get things rolling, like to set something up, and you just go off and then you don't respond. And I'm like, huh, that's a bit frustrating. And then what happened is that let's say they might respond, sometimes they don't respond, and that gets very annoying. Sometimes they do, but then when I respond again they jump off. It's like, why is it always a constant jump off or whatever? It's just really so frustrating. There was a few situations where we're like, hey, please stay on the WhatsApp so we can finish this communication. It's supposed to last like 3 to 5 minutes, literally. It's not like we're having like an hour-long conversation or whatever, right? It's just 3 to 5 minutes just to set something solid up. I especially to plan and stuff like this, I'll have something solid. I don't like to come to something flimsy, whatever, right? So if let's say we're gonna go meet for coffee, but you don't know which coffee shop, you don't know what time or what day. I mean, how does that help anyone, right? It doesn't. So it's like girls would just, consistently do this, and I'd constantly, I mean, not constantly, but let's say consistently would have to point it out, and like always like respectfully or anything like that. I wouldn't be like very confrontational. Try to be like minimally confrontational as possible about it, but they would do it, and it was very irksome. Yeah.
Let me unpack this for you. Okay, so first of all, as somebody who is busy and I'm not always like, I text when I have time. Sometimes I'm sitting on my couch watching TV and I'm staring at my phone, so then I'll text the person back right away. But other times I'm not. So if somebody's going back and forth with me, like I'm not always going to answer them like a second later. It might be a few minutes, it might be a half an hour, it might be a couple hours. It depends what time of day it is. So I'm going to give you advice on how to do this. Oh, also, my other thing is boys should plan the date. Like boys should plan the date. And so my advice for you moving forward is definitely be considerate of where like her scheduling or where she lives or whatever. But I think what you do is you get matched, you send her a text, hey, this is so and so. can we have a few minute phone call to figure out the date? So on the phone, you figure out the logistics of the date, like what day, what time, what neighborhood. Then you say, okay, or like maybe you discuss the type of activity you want to do, whether it's you can be like, oh, is it okay to get coffee? So then after that, you go, you find the coffee shop, like you look it up, find the coffee shop, send her, text her and be like, hey, does Tuesday at 7 o'clock at this and this place, like, how's that? After you've
Yeah, so
discussed,
like
like let's say she tells you her neighborhood, so you find something that's either in the middle or somewhere easy for her to get to, unless you're picking her up. You find the place, you set you already asked her what day and time works for her, and you guys agreed upon Tuesday after, like, let's say she gets home from work at 6 o'clock on Tuesdays. So, and Tuesday is the best night that works for both of you. So you say this and this place at 7 o'clock on Tuesday. Does that work for you? And then there, it's solved. You don't have to go back and forth. I feel like planning a date isn't rocket science, and it doesn't have to be both people involved totally. Like, I think you could just ask her, or if you wanted to do it over text, be like, hey, what day this week or which days this week work for you best, day and time, and which neighborhood works best
yeah.
for you.
So I want to jump in here and say, well, first of all, when you start, girls are very like they're very uncomfortable receiving a phone call, like when you first
So
start
that's why
it.
you have to text and ask
Yeah,
if you like when you could talk on the phone. I
yeah.
hate talking on
So
the phone, but like for this kind of thing, like you kind of have to.
right. So, and the next thing is that there was an already agreement, like, oh, we're gonna, we'll talk at this time or whatever. So it's like pretty much like this is like the time we're talking. It's not gonna take very long or whatever. So I'm assuming that if we're already agreed that we're gonna be talking, it's like 7:30, whatever. So we're talking at 7:30. I don't see why all of a sudden now at 7:30 you're in the middle of something or you're doing something and it's like you can't like just be present for like 3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Because I'm
Okay,
taking my time
that
to
I
do
get.
that.
But
Yeah.
are you texting or are you on the phone?
No, no, I'm texting. I'm texting because like no, apparently girls are not comfortable getting on the phone for some reason.
No, no, no. You should
Um,
call. Who told you about not getting on the phone?
I've tried it. No one wants to do it. Um,
Well,
and
that's a
so
bad
like
sign. You probably shouldn't go out with a girl who can't have a 5 minute phone call.
yeah, I don't know what to make of it, but a lot of times like I don't know if it's timidity, I don't know if whatever it is, like if you're uncomfortable, whatever it is, like I'm
Well,
very
if you're
like
scheduling a time to talk, then maybe you shouldn't do that if you're texting. Like maybe just start off right away, like, hey, what night works for you to meet this week? And then she'll tell you, and oh, what night works this week and what time? And then she gets back to you, then you set the date and time, and then you're like, okay, what neighborhood is coffee okay? She gives you the neighborhood. Like, instead of like scheduling a time to text, if a guy is scheduling a time to talk to me, I expect him to call. Like, I am sitting with nothing, with my TV off, everything, nothing going on, waiting for a phone call, headphones in, waiting for a phone call. And then if he starts texting me, then I'm like, what is this?
so in fact it was the opposite. I was with this girl, whatever. I just was like, let's make a call. So I called and she literally just was like hanging up. And I was like, okay, what gives? So I decided to go texting, whatever, and she was fine with that. Um, and this kind of thing would happen like,
Weird.
I don't know, 3, 4 times. Yeah. It
That
would, so it's
happened
like for
more than once to try to call?
but different people. Yeah.
What kind of girls are you dating?
It's
Like,
more
not normal.
more religious girls as opposed to like if you're more
Yeah, but
moderating.
I feel like they get on the phone. Like, don't you have a phone call before the date?
It's possible, yeah. Sometimes it can happen, but
I
other
always want
times
to talk to a guy on the phone before I commit to going out with them.
yeah, sure. I mean, like I'm always willing to do that. It's just they're not willing to do it. So I don't actually get the chance of trying to do that. And so it's like if you're doing
It's
this,
weird.
it's like, yeah. So anyway, that's like really just like a more broader, fuller context. And plus
I
I'm
feel like
really
that's
flexible and
weird.
adaptable. Plus, I'm really flexible and adaptable. There was one quick story here where I was trying to set something up with a girl, and what happened was is that we agreed over text, and then let's say 2 hours before she ends up canceling, and she was very busy, whatever. I was like, okay, sure, like we can always reschedule, right? And so we end up I offer a different time, a different plan, whatever. And so she agrees to that. And then I guess like 3 days later, whatever, like again, like an hour or two before she ends up canceling. And I was like, okay. That was that kind of person that was so flexible and adaptable that I was like, you know what? How about you come up with something? Because clearly I'm trying here and it's not working. So maybe like you come with something and that might be able to work for you, right? Like just like an unorthodox kind of way of doing something. And so she does, and then after she ends up canceling on herself. And so that was yeah. So that was like the experience, and I don't recall
So
if she was also
weird.
one that didn't want to. Yeah, she didn't want to go on a phone call either or anything like that. I
Girls seem
do
weird.
recall though asking for an apology. She ended up giving one at the end, because it was just really just so frustrating. And I like, and the thing was when she ended up canceling herself, she was like, I forgot exactly what she said, but it was something like, "Oh, like this is not working," or whatever. But something that she said, and I was just like, "Oh, come on!" And so I was like, I was upset, but I was like, I did not like, exude some kind of passive aggressiveness or anything like that. It was calm, cordial, etc. But I did ask for an apology because of that. But yeah, and so like I'm just saying like that's like the more broader context. So definitely that. Another thing would just be something like they're lying. And it's like one of those ones where it's like, oh, it's a very classic. Hey, I just saw this. And I'm like, yeah, you didn't just see this. I mean, like clearly you're online. You were online when I sent you something, or whatever. And I'm assuming that it'll send like the text to the front of like the WhatsApp chat or whatever. So I'm assuming that you'd have to get it. I can't imagine there was a situation where you didn't. But this was like a real good classic and likely also a red flag, but I just always constantly roll with the punches anyway, even though they do that. But yeah, anytime any girl's just like, yeah, I just saw this, and always like resist the urge of just calling them out on it. Maybe I should just do that, just like call them out on it. But
Well,
um
you have to
yeah.
understand that sometimes people are busy. Like I see texts come in all the time. Sometimes I don't want to answer them yet. Like
Yeah, for sure,
especially
for
like
sure. But if you're like,
especially if you're asking me for a plan, sometimes I gotta ask and confirm about other things. Like also, how long are they making you wait? Is this like a couple
oh, like two
hours or
weeks.
like days? Oh, okay.
Oh,
That's
like
not
two
okay.
weeks.
That's
Yeah.
not nice.
It'll be like 2 weeks. Hey, I just saw this. I'm like, yeah, that's
Yeah,
not
okay, that's not nice. If it's a few hours, then like fine. Like sometimes I
yeah,
just
for
have to
sure.
like figure things out. Like I don't know, if someone's asking me for a plan. I'm like, okay, I gotta check a couple other things, or maybe
Hmm.
my coworkers start talking to me, or like other things going on. No, I think it's not nice to keep someone waiting for more than like 24 hours.
Mm.
But I don't know. All of this is they're telling you that they're not interested and you should stop
Oh yeah.
wasting your time.
Yeah, I sometimes I'm just like beat myself over something where it's just it's just too silly, but definitely like this. And it's like really just trying to like really get into something. It's like, hey, I barely even talked to you yet. And this would like be a constant thing. And I always like check like review like what I said. Like I say anything offensive? Did I say anything like I'm very, try to be very cordial, try to um, you know, yeah, just try to be very cordial
They're
with people
probably
and
just
stuff like
not
this. It's
into
like,
it.
yeah,
Like
I,
that's
I
like the
guess.
frustrating hard reality of everything. It's like if someone likes you, like they're not going to treat you like that. And like yeah, we should always be treating people with respect and you never know what's going to happen, but like when people give you signs that they're not interested, you should take them to mean that they're not interested. And like it's hard. And you have to learn that the hard way and it's like annoying and frustrating. But like if a girl doesn't answer you for 2 weeks, just be like, "Oh, never mind." Like she's like, "Oh,
Yeah,
sorry, just
yeah.
getting to this."
I
Like
mean,
be
it was like
like,
a
"Oh,
situation
yeah,
like
no problem."
that. Yeah, sorry for interrupting. Like, yeah, in a situation like that, I was like very young and new to things and stuff like this, and like really trying to be like give everyone the benefit of the doubt of everything. Like that's like really how I try to approach things. It's like, yeah, I'm just giving benefit of the doubt all the time. Now, less so. Yeah, I was like, so now, over the years, right, I was less gullible, I guess you can say that. But beforehand, I was like, just try to give literally every girl the benefit of the doubt as much as possible for anything. Another
You guys
thing, like,
already know my opinion about the benefit of the doubt. People don't deserve it. And like that might be my hot take, but I've given them the benefit of the doubt so many times. Most people don't deserve it.
this is my hot take on really my personal opinion. I think get a lot of pushback on this next one. But if I'm asking, I deserve at least a no. You'd have girls where they just leave you unanswered for forever or whatever. And you're always taught that the process, could take forever. It's like, oh, you're waiting a month, you're waiting 5 weeks or whatever it is. And it's like, couldn't it just be within like 2 weeks and you just say no? I like, from my opinion, I deserve a no. Like, yeah, it's gonna suck, but it's the least I'm owed. Like, don't just be like, don't say anything. If someone like asks me about something that are you interested in enough, I will go the extra mile into things and this and that and whatnot to see if it's actually like compatible or whatnot. And then I'll definitely give an answer, one way or another. So it's like I feel that like at least I should be owed the same. But again, that's just like my own personal opinion on the matter, and that's my hot take on things. Where it's like, if I'm asking, then within some kind of reasonable time frame, you should just definitely say, like, answer and say no.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. I think it's better to just like say yes or no and then move on. But I don't know, as somebody who's interviewed for jobs before, you don't always get the courtesy of a no. It's just
Yeah,
life.
yeah,
But I
definitely.
don't know.
Yeah,
I have like a very like just from experience, I don't know, you can follow up with people, you can do whatever, but at some point, like you just take it for what it is. Like if it's been 2 days and I still haven't heard back, I'm assuming it's a no and I'm moving on.
yeah, but in like the Shadchans system, they always say it takes a lot longer than 2 days or whatever, and
Yeah, but
that
that's
just oh
BS.
yeah. Sorry.
That's BS. I don't see why anything
Yeah,
has to take that
I
long.
I don't see it either. No, I don't see
And
it
I can
either.
tell you, any match that I've waited to respond to, there's a reason. Like if it's a guy I'm excited about, I will say yes right away. If it's somebody who I've waited on, then like chances are I might say yes and give them a chance, but I'm not excited about them. I don't really want to go out with them. Like that could
Yeah.
be said about anything, whether it's on whatever platform. If a friend suggests it, I usually give an answer because I don't, out of respect for my friend and appreciation for them setting me up. Also, when a shotgun asks me, I usually give an answer. But like when I used to have YU Connects, I would extend some of those matches until I couldn't extend them anymore because I didn't want to make a decision because I really didn't want to say yes, but I felt the pressure to. I feel like dating apps are a bad example. Sometimes I get matches on loop. No, when I get
Mm.
matches on loop, also like if I'm not saying yes right away, there's a reason. Like the guys who look really great on loop, like their profile looks great to me and it's someone I'm excited about, I would say yes right away. But if it's someone who's like, "Ugh, I don't know, like I don't know, I'll give you an example. Like there's a guy who's been sitting in my loop for like probably over a month by now, and I just like I don't want to say no because his profile looks like pretty decent, but I don't want to say yes because like there's one thing about him that I'm like, ooh, I don't know. Like I feel like that's gonna be a no ultimately. So
So like, why don't you just look into it? Just try to look at that if it's appropriate.
I don't know, because it's like I'm hoping one day. Also, Loop isn't that serious. Like none of these apps are that serious. Why you connect is they're canceled. But
Hmm.
I don't know. I mean, Loop is serious and everyone should take Loop seriously. I'm just saying it's like I don't think this guy is waiting like to see if I answer.
Yeah, it's
Like
very different
for
than
all
like
I
more
know, he
normal.
could have said no.
Yeah.
I don't know. I try to answer. I do try to, but depending on the person, depending on the platform, maybe I'm not the best. Like sometimes like when I go on dating apps even like on Hinge, I'll let my like Hinge likes accumulate because I just don't feel like going through them.
Yeah.
So like that might not necessarily say anything about the guy. It's just like okay, I'm just busy in my life. Like, not dating someone, just like busy. I don't feel like going through my hinge likes. And then at some point in life, I get bored and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go through my hinge likes. And I might accept all of them. I might accept none of them. But it could be
Yeah, no,
like two
honestly,
months later.
no, honestly, you speak specifically talking about, let's say, like a shop that sends you resume or something like that. Like, okay, but never that.
Yeah.
You go
No,
through that.
those,
Yeah.
I don't understand why people don't answer. I feel like when, like, it's person to person, like, That's just like, I don't know. Also, shotguns are annoying. They're
Yes.
usually like asking for follow-ups and they're like, you should go out with this person, you should do that. They put a lot of pressure. And it's like, okay. But if you say no and you're firm with that no, then great. So maybe it's the shotgun that you should be complaining about, not the girl.
Yeah, I mean, definitely I have like I said, my fair share of things that like, shocking complaints. And there was just some things I was like, girl complaints. I think like
Yeah.
what I one-off, maybe a pet peeve, but like you have a situation, let's say you're talking to a girl, and then what happens is it's like they can't give you like full-bodied answers. It's like let's just trying to like have like a good conversation. Um, and you're talking about some particular topic or whatever, what have you, and it's like like let's say a short current answer or an answer that doesn't offer like just a little bit of depth to it, and like you just feel like, oh wow, this is so bland. And this will happen, I don't like want to say frequently, but it would happen from time to time. And I'm like, well, look, if the guy's has to plan the date, has to come up with everything, I take you out, etc. And it's like, and obviously you're gonna have some conversation, right? It's my opinion, you should come at least a bit prepared to really converse back. Where instead of just like, why am I doing all the talking? We're doing saying all these asking all these good questions. It's like, couldn't like you do the same? Like couldn't like you just like ask a good question too? So it's like something like, what's your favorite food? It's like, oh, I mean, come on, right? If you're let's say like let's say you're on the topic of food, it'd be like, let's see, like you like cooking. I'd be like, a great question would be something like, not what's your favorite food, but what's the recipe you've memorized by heart? Like I've like had like probably like two or three recipes, and I'm a guy that I like memorized by heart. It's like, so what's that recipe you just like literally know in the back of your hand when you make it? Like that's a great question. I mean, at least in my but it's like, so it's like you should like come with a great answer, right? You know what I'm saying? Like have a great question. Like it just really gets to me when that doesn't happen, and it's just like, oh come on, like there's like no effort whatsoever, you know.
You're not gonna like
So yeah.
you're not gonna like my answer to that. My answer is they're not interested. And like I've had it too. I've had it on dates where I have to like pull conversation out of the guy. Or maybe it's just a super boring person where they don't have social skills. But usually, I don't know, I can tell from my own personal experience, and I try not to do it. I try to like still be engaging. Um, this is also why I have a phone call before. Because if I really am not interested in the guy, I'll end it after a phone call. But like, if I'm not interested, I'm not gonna put in effort. And like maybe that's bad. That's not so respectful and that's not so nice. But and I've had it where if a guy is not putting an effort, it just means he's not interested. So I think just have to I think that's where a phone call would be good. You have a phone call. And if she's not interested, like if she acts uninterested, then you could just be like, oh, I'm not interested in like bringing this to a date. I
Sure,
don't know.
sure.
Listen, I
I
could be wrong, but that's from
no,
other
I
guests that I've talked to and from friends and things, like when the other person isn't reciprocating in the conversation, it usually means that they're not interested.
yeah, I mean, I would totally get that, but what I would say is just that perhaps on a bit of a double down, it would just be like at least just put some effort and say, and then you could call a night and then go. Because it's like
Yeah.
it's because I the way I'm seeing it is kind of like a tit for tat. It's like if I'm putting all the effort in, it's like couldn't you just put in something? Don't have to do
Well,
anything,
you
just put in
shouldn't see it
something.
like that because you have no idea what it is to be a woman. And like for all that women go through, a guy can plan and pay for a coffee. Like it's not that big of a deal. So you should never expect, well, first of all, you should never say that a woman owes you something for planning a date because she
No,
doesn't.
no, I wasn't saying that. I was just saying I was like,
Aside from a
is there like
thank you,
expectation?
the only thing she owes is a thank you. But at the same time, like it is nice if you act respectful and you act nice. Like if if I'm going out with a guy, even if he's not for me, if I like take the hour and just like try to have conversation, try to like be engaging. Like I understand that, but I think you have to look at it from a different perspective. And like you just sometimes have to take the L. And like it sucks and it's frustrating, but I don't know. Sometimes when people aren't interested, they shut down. And like, I don't know, I personally used to be much better at faking that, like, I can have a conversation with someone I'm not interested in, but now I'm like really bad at it. If I'm talking to someone and I really don't want to be talking to them, it's really hard to fake it. But that's why I think you should have a phone call. Because if you have a phone call, if you talk to a girl for 15 minutes, you could probably gauge whether or not there's interest or not. Like some
Sure. I
sort of
mean,
interest or some sort of like conversation. And if it's like a 10-minute phone call and she's like not reciprocating conversation, then you could be like, oh yeah, this is nice, but I just don't think it's a match. And then you don't even
sure,
have to
if
go
you
on the
get that
date.
chance. I also wanted to jump in and say something. It wasn't, I don't really see it as an expectation. I see it as like some form of courtesy. It's like if you don't give the courtesy, I don't really it doesn't really directly bother me per se. It's I think what I'd say is like it just indirectly bothers me that you didn't want to go with the courtesy. It's like you don't have to, but I mean it's like, could you? So like that's like really the way I see it. So it's a bit more nuanced to just like, oh, as an expectation to do it. But as like I think anything that I'm really talking about, that's the way I see it. I see it like as a courtesy where it's like, oh, maybe just say no. It's like you can say that, you can do that. Or it's like you can respond within a reasonable amount of time after I'm like doing all this effort. It's like, like, oh, I just saw this now. Like really you just saw this now or anything like that. Like that's like really what I'm just like saying, not really
Yeah, no,
expectation, just
I
the
agree with
courtesy.
you.
You
I
can
agree with
totally
you.
do it. It really
I think
shows
people
your
should
strength
be
of
more
character.
yeah. I agree that people should be more considerate. I think a lot of people these days are very inconsiderate, especially with these types of things where they're not considerate of someone else's time, effort, anything. So the nice thing to do is to just say no. But I think you might also have to understand that, especially in the dating world that you're in, girls are put under a tremendous amount of pressure to say yes. So which is, I'm not giving an excuse. I'm just maybe providing some sort of explanation why these girls are saying yes, even though they may not actually be interested.
Yeah, could
Like
very well. Well, yeah, I mean,
shotguns, parents, everyone, society pushes these girls to say yes. Like, you don't know how many shotguns have pressured me into saying yes to people who are not a match for me. Like, I've already talked about this multiple times. Some shotgun, she actually sent it on loop. She sent me this guy who's like in his 40s and like yeshivish.
mm,
And I said no right away. I was like, number one, he's way too old for me. And number two, he is yeshivish and I'm the furthest thing from yeshivish. And then she sends me a text. She's like, you should really go out with him. He said yes to you, all of this. And I'm like, what part of him being 15 years older than me and way more yeshivish? I'm not yeshivish at all, but way more
yeah.
like hushkuffically to the right than me do you not understand. Like, I don't know. I've had another shotgun. Like, she sends me a guy. This was back in my White Connect days before I canceled. Like, she sent me this guy, and I probably told this story before, but like I knew the Shadchan. She was actually my kindergarten teacher. Like she
Oh,
knows my family. Like I've known her. Like she's part of the same community that I'm from. And she sends me this guy who she had just been sent to one of my good friends, and my good friend actually went out with him. And my good friend didn't like him. I texted her when I got the match. She's like, Rachel, I didn't like him. You definitely will not like him. Like he is
mm,
not for you. Like don't waste your time. So because the Shah Khan supposedly knows me, I'm like, okay, why do you think it's a good match? Because nothing about him matches what I'm looking for. And my friend just told me personality wise, it's not a match. So why do you think I should go out with him? And she's like trying to convince me to go out with him. She's giving me dumb reasons. She was literally like, oh, he said yes to you and he knows who your parents are. And I was like, cool. But like, listen, I'm not someone who gets pushed into things that I don't want to do. But not all girls are like me. Not all girls say no and stand up for themselves. And especially in the more right wing communities, a lot of these girls are just pressured into saying yes. So they might not be interested, but they're being pressured into saying yes, which again is not a good excuse, but it might be an explanation.
yeah.
So
That
I'm hoping I'm giving you a little perspective.
Well, the thing is that sadly, no. From my experience, majority of all the girls say no. Majority. It's quite rare where someone will say yes and stuff like this. So it's like when someone says yes, like, oh, okay, something might actually make sense here. And so if it made sense, it's like, okay, so let's try something out, right? It's like I wouldn't suppose. I mean, it's still possible, obviously, but it's like I wouldn't suppose that the girl was pressured or anything like this, seeing as that like basically like just anyone can just easily say no and just move on or whatever. So that's like why like, I basically like brought this in because of that reason. It's not just like people will say yes quite frequently. That's actually not the case. Well, in my particular case for sure. I wanted to like pivot a bit. There was like two things that I was like really, I could say you could say passionate about for sure. You think about, for example, some select cases where someone's like, oh, like you're interested in hard work and stuff like this. Like, oh yeah, I like hard work. You like hard work? Okay. And the other one I think was like meaningful conversation or something like surrounding that. I mean, these are kind of like words you can say buzzwords and stuff like this. And so basically I want to put my 2 cents into it because like those two things are going to vary for every single person. But the thing is that I have like some specific kind of like take on it. And basically I really want to get like, a girl's perspective exactly how they perceive these things. So like for example, what I mean, let's say let's go with like hard work. For example, it's like, okay, so this is not to like really toot my own horn, but like I'm just trying to share my perspective exactly like what do you like mean by hard work. It's like I've cleaned garbage cans. I've worked in warehouses that are like 35-pound boxes. I've like, worked in like extremely busy restaurants and stuff like this and whatnot. I've worked for like pennies on the dollar constantly. And I've done like really, really long schooling and stuff like that. Even though that's like a topic for another time, or not in this discussion. But definitely like I definitely know it's not like it wasn't like a quick 1, 2, 3 like acquiring my undergrad at all. That's for sure. Among other things. So it's like I was like really like exposed, like really like hard work. And I fully understand like, like women like have their own hard work and stuff like this and their own what's it called, that's for sure the thing. But like when I'm asking and like thinking, like trying to like gauge exactly like where your experience lies and like what exactly it's like the responses I've always gotten is like, yeah, okay, okay. I'm like, everyone's experience is different, everyone's thing is different for sure. Um, but I would say a hot take is like, is that like at like some that maybe if there were like some kind of like threshold for like hard work is that like your hard work though?
I mean,
Like
I can
I'm
explain
not
what
like trying
I
to
mean when I say hard work.
like I would never want to discount someone else's experience or say, hey, that's not hard
Yeah.
work. But at the same time, if we're trying to really like have some kind of connection where it is, like I'm really like, oh wow, that's really hard work,
Yeah.
and
I
go.
mean, listen, I could tell you just what I mean when I say it, because yeah, I'm not doing manual labor, but I work hard. I studied hard. I got good grades. I passed all my CPA exams. I worked a lot of late hours. I still work a lot of late hours. There are two things by hard work that when I say I want a guy who values working hard, that I mean. Number
Mhm.
one is like actually working for what you want. Some people are handed things, and I don't mean if you're just like a crazy genius and everything comes to your brain really easy. That's not what I
Yeah.
mean. I mean that you have a goal and you work to achieve it. Like you want to be this and this, you do school, you do well in school, you interview for the jobs, you work the late hours, you do what it takes to get to your goals. That's number one. Number two is money. Like 100%. Like I know it sounds bad, but raising an Orthodox family costs a lot of money. And like when I say I want someone who works hard, I want someone who works hard to make money. And like I do. So I don't feel bad when I say that because I don't have any expectations on someone else that I don't have on myself. I'm not holding people to double standards. I know some girls do. I get an earful about it from my guy friends that all these girls do nothing and they just want rich husbands, which like yeah, a rich husband would be nice, but like I work hard. I work hard for certain money, and when I'm looking at potential partners, I don't want someone who like it's also a personal preference. Like some people are like, oh my God, follow your passions, follow your dreams. I don't care about dreams. I don't care about passions. I care about goals, but those goals are to get you somewhere. And it's to get you, and like again, I'm not some gold digger. I'm not just looking for a guy to take all of his money. I'm looking for someone who is working to support a Jewish family. And supporting a Jewish family in these days and age, in this day and age, costs a lot of money. So when I say I want someone who's hardworking, again, that's someone who has those values of working hard. They're not just like mommy and daddy are paying their way through life, or they're floating la-di-da and don't care how things happen. That's number one. They see something realistic, and by realistic I mean like, I don't mean like, oh, this is an attainable goal. Like most goals should be attainable. Like you shouldn't be setting out for goals that aren't attainable, but it's like things that make sense realistically in life. And then someone who's also trying to like, and one, I guess I should say like one of the goals is to be able to support a Jewish family. And
Yeah,
yeah,
so I want to
so
jump in on this. One thing is just like I worked hard for little money. Um, Now it's different, but definitely that I worked tons of jobs, very hard. I don't want to say necessarily very, very long hours, but I would say long enough for sure for pennies on the dollar. But also at the same time, like I paid for my own schooling, and at the same time, I was in a unique position without elaborating too much or anything like that. I was in a unique position in where I finished my religious schooling for sure, but when I was a teen, basically the secular program in my school closed. And so like I was not even gonna get, do any exam, any diploma, nothing. I was doing fairly well in school. I wasn't straight A's or anything, but definitely well. And so like I had to like really work myself out of a hole where instead of like where you have like your average person can just move on to go to the next line of schooling or anything like this. Readily, many people, of course, if they're blessed enough to have their parents pay for them and stuff like this, they could go to school and get good grades and whatnot. That was definitely not the case for me. It was definitely you had to work yourself out of a hole. First, climb back out, and then try to move forward in schooling all the while paying for yourself as opposed to anything else. And so it's like I definitely, yeah, it's not like an average experience. And again, it's not to toot my own horn, but it's like I'm just saying it for saying like, okay, well, yeah, certainly that's like definitely hard work.
yeah.
Um
And I'm not discounting anyone's experience. And like, believe
yeah,
me, I'm not some privileged little princess. Like, I might
yeah,
act like it, but I'm not. Like, I'm still paying for my undergrad. Like, that
yeah,
that that is
exactly,
still getting paid
exactly.
for by me. And yeah, I am lucky that I did go to a decent high school that my parents did pay for. I didn't really have any problems applying or getting into college. I also worked hard. I had more than straight A's in high school and college. So like that is on me. Like I studied, I spent lots of late nights studying and taking 1,000 classes and doing all the work that it takes. And I definitely was the one who studied for my own CPA exams. I'm definitely the one who went on countless interviews to countless accounting firms. And like even now, like in my career, like I'm the one who does the work. But yeah, different people come from different levels, different starting points. I definitely
Yeah.
appreciate that. But you're asking like what girls mean when they say hard work. I would say 9 times out of 10, they mean money.
Hmm.
People want money. And like, listen, I'm no better than that. The only difference between me and someone else, it, or me and some of these other people, is that like I'm not expecting something from someone else that I'm not doing for myself.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, so I mean, listen, I'm not disputing that you don't work hard. I'm not disputing that it's hard depending on where your beginnings are. And I think people should be more understanding. But I think the fact of the matter is because we live in such a crazy world right now where day school tuition is tens of thousands of dollars a year per kid. And living in a Jewish community, a house in a Jewish community is at least $1 million, depending on the community. But most of these
For
Jewish
sure. Yeah.
communities, plus you need to, there's camp. Camp is anywhere between $3,000 to $5,000 a summer per kid. And kosher food, Shabbos.
Yeah,
This actually
everything for
came up
sure.
in conversations. Like hosting a Shabbat meal is outrageously expensive. And like I try not to think about it. I try when
Mhm.
I invite my friends over, I'm hosting the meal. I am doing it because that's part of our culture. Thank God I'm in a position where I don't really have to think about it. And I still try to be smart about it and not spend more than I need to spend. But at the same time, like that's a huge part of our culture and that's a huge expense. So when you add all these things up, like I've assigned numbers to it, I've done calculations, but you're talking about not even like a six-figure household. You're talking like multiple six-figure household. Like $100,000 a household isn't going to cut it when yeshiva tuition is $20,000 a kid per year. So like if you just look, I look at it, I'm an accountant. So I look at it from a numbers perspective, like looking out, like if I'm making X amount, I need someone to make at least the same amount so we can get even anywhere close to being able to support a religious family.
For sure.
And like not,
I want to
oh
jump into
yes.
something really quickly. And I wanted to point out, though, that what's interesting, perhaps in, I don't want to say a different perspective, but maybe even perhaps even a counter what you were saying, was basically that you could save money. But the thing is that you can definitely do hard work and receive almost nothing in return for that hard work.
I
It
agree.
happens all the time. I've definitely experienced like something like this. I mean, now, thank God not, but I'm saying definitely in the past, for sure. It's like, you know, like I used to like do what you were doing, but the difference between us would be is that I would get B's. It didn't matter. Like I remember, like I'm like saying like I'm gonna get A's and whatnot, and it's like you know you do this study trick and this and whatnot stuff like this. And I had actually a close friend who actually didn't study, and he was like, hey, if I studied, and like he just moved himself, like he moved the bar from let's say for example like let's say from 92 to 95 or 97, and like I was like trying to move the bar by like a far larger margin, like and it was let's say for example like B plus to like you know like A minus or whatever or A plus or whatever, and it's like that just wasn't happening. And it's not like a
Yeah.
situation where it's like oh you know oh it's never gonna happen or anything like that. That's definitely wasn't my mindset or attitude or anything like that. It definitely just was like you know like just do your best, like go in study whatever, do what you can, and at the end you're just gonna get a B, or like you get like a B plus or whatever. It's like I just
Yeah.
knew it was coming even when like I was like planning for an A for sure. And that's not to say I never got A's before. For sure, I got A's for sure. But yeah, it's definitely like that. You could definitely put in a lot, but not necessarily get everything you
No,
hoped
and
you would get.
I can
Or even in
appreciate
hard
that.
work
Like,
and when you're doing work, especially for example, let's say you know remember back in the day, you know like you're working somewhere, right? It's like yeah, you're doing hard work, but doesn't mean that you're going to get a higher salary or it doesn't mean you're going to get any overtime or going to get increase or anything like that.
no, and I understand that it's not in everyone's wheelhouse to do all of it. I think, but yeah, but I think when you're saying when girls are looking for guys who work hard, they mean money. It means
No.
money.
What I actually was trying to
It's
say
just the
is
nice way of saying money.
for sure, but what I was actually trying to say is I think I misrepresented it. Was trying to say is that they value hard work, and it's like,
They
oh, okay,
value
that's
money.
interesting. Yeah. So,
It's their way of saying that they value money, but it's like the more PC acceptable way of saying it.
sure.
I'm just translating here. I'm
Yeah.
not like saying whether that's right or wrong, but I'm just translating what it means. At
I think
least
that's really
in my opinion.
I think it's
What
really
I think it
eye
means.
opener because like I was thinking it in the terms of like actually hard work, like like just in pure terms like hard work. Like oh, you understand like you're aware of hard like you know you had some hard work. Okay, I'm listening. um,
No, and again, it's not just like being handed money from your parents or from someone else, like working towards that money, but what they're not talking about the work. They're talking about the results from the work, and that's money.
yeah. I
At
think
least
that like the
that's what I'm
last
pretty sure.
yeah, there was the last topic was also like I think like, quite a buzzword that plenty of people talk about, which is basically meaningful conversation. And I came up with basically two, I don't say metrics, two, I guess you could say perhaps, just lack of better terms, check boxes. Like this is my personal opinion here again on exactly like what's like should make a meaningful conversation. So the first checkbox is like how many words do you have to use to describe whatever topic or whatever subject you have for it to be meaningful. A classic example is, let's say, if you say like justice and a chair, which one can you automatically associate is going to be more meaningful between one or the other? And I'm saying this, by the way, because you have so many people say, oh, well, meaning's relative. And I'm like, oh, okay, sure. But I actually disagree with that. I don't like really uh, think about it like that. I think like, so we're gonna go like what I'm talking about. So say it's like justice in a chair. Well, you're gonna need many more words and sentences to describe why a chair would be meaningful, as opposed to if you thought that justice was meaningful. And you can like probably say like 2 or 3 words and automatically you know that justice is meaningful. And the other one is how many like how much time and thought process you put behind what you're saying, as opposed to if you did not. So like someone could write like a speech, right? And they didn't think much about it or whatever. They can say one thing and it's like very generic and there's not many, much impact on what they're doing. But if they really, puts a lot of effort, energy into what they were saying, it would become much more meaningful, especially if it's like, if it's specific, targeting a specific person, targeting a specific audience, what have you. And so it's like, I feel like that is where like you can like, if those two check boxes are checked, it's like, okay, you can have like something meaningful going on, as opposed to if you didn't. So why don't you get to like your take on this?
Um, I don't know, because I think it's all relative. And I don't know. I guess like I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know if I necessarily have any strong opinions. When I'm talking to someone initially in dating, I'm not looking for a meaningful conversation. I'm looking to see if
No,
we
but
have like a
I'm
good vibe.
saying, sure, yeah. I mean, that's totally, that totally works. But I'm just saying that at some point, right? It's like looking for a meaningful, oh, well, were you into a meaningful conversation? Um, you don't have to go with something really super heavy or anything like that. But at the same time, it's like if there's some kind of topic of substance, um, and there's some kind of like thought put behind it, and it's more recognizable as something that's more meaningful. I was like, okay, yeah, hey, that's cool, as opposed
Yeah.
to if, you know,
I mean, I don't really believe in like trying to have a quote unquote meaningful conversation for the sake of having a meaningful conversation. I think it's more genuine if like you're talking about real stuff and it turns into something meaningful. Like, I'm also not the type, I don't look for the buzzwords. Like, I'm the type it's like, oh yeah, like this is becoming meaningful because of what we're saying about it, not because of the topic we're talking about.
yes, something could become meaningful for sure. No, I'm saying that if suppose that you were like, getting into something meaningful, right? Um, then you would suppose that, it would check those two check boxes. If you were going into something and it's like, we're gonna, I don't know, deep six it or do something else or talk about something else or whatever. It's like, oh, hey, well, I mean, it's not something that can make you uncomfortable, of course. Obviously not. That's not what we're talking about. If you're off or anything like this, um, or if you just weren't even, going for it in the first place, you know. So it's like, so I brought this up because um, those two, I think specifically, um, are it's like I feel that girls like they don't what's the looking here like they're not they don't like they don't they can't really engage with it or want to engage with it or whatever. It's like sometimes it just gets you like, huh, like okay, and that just puts
What?
me on the confusion end. It's like if you can engage with this, it's like that's awesome because you mentioned in your description, so it makes a lot of sense. And it's like if you're not or you can't, you just like fumbling around with it. It's like, well, like
Wait, but engage
um,
with something specific or engage with like some
no, like okay,
arbitrary
so for
thing that
example,
you're
the first
calling?
one is like if you're like we were talking about like hard work, for example, right? It's like that one for sure.
Yeah.
I give an example. I remember this one that was really crazy and awesome, where it was actually Erev Yom Kippur, and I had like a very crucial class that I had to do. I knew I couldn't miss that class, and so I was basically preparing for Yom Kippur, and then I ended up leaving, rushing to class, taking the class, coming back home, finalizing prep for Yom Kippur, and taking a Yom Kippur. Like that's the kind of thing. It was like that definitely was like definitely took a lot out of me. And that's like a good example. Like, oh, you had something, do you have some kind of other experience, like a similar experience of this or anything like that? Or where something like got really intense back in college? Or let's say you're talking about something meaningful, right? You can, I don't know, cousin's birthday party, I don't know what, right? And somehow it's meaningful in some way. Right. And it's like you're trying to like share some kind of like meaningful experience, but like it's just like kind of like a fumble around with it. So that's what I'm talking about. Those two especially. Maybe there's a lot of other things, but especially those two topics. Where people like, I don't know, I find that just like they fumble around with it. And I was like, I couldn't understand why. They also just like fumble around with it.
I don't know. I still don't think I fully understand what you're trying to say. So maybe that's why, maybe they're confused.
Could be. Could be.
I don't know. I try not to get too deep too quick. Like, just keep it light. See if you can get along. See if you have a similar sense of humor. See if, I don't know. I think people are constantly trying to rush to get like into these like deep, meaningful conversations. But at the end of the day, like, you should see if you could have fun with the person before you like having fun, I think, is the base level. If you can have fun with someone, then you move up the next step. Because like if I can have a deep, meaningful conversation, I could have a deep, meaningful conversation with a stranger. That doesn't mean I can have fun with a stranger. But I could also have fun with a stranger and not necessarily deep, meaningful conversation. I think you need a duality, but I think you should start off light first.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Definitely talking about like that. I'm just saying, like when you're like going further in, it's definitely not date one or date two, or whatever. And it's not too deep, obviously, but just something or whatever. I'm talking about something that's like coming around at that point. It's not you like just like you didn't start off like this, but when you could definitely get into it at some point later in time. That it just doesn't seem to they don't seem to go with it really well.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm still confused, but I think that's okay.
Fair enough.
But anyway, Yaakov, is there anything else that you wanted to discuss before we get into our wrap-up segment?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, cool. So then, Yaakov, can you give me and my listeners one piece of dating advice?
I don't know. I'd say most of the time you like just take things slow, and at the same time, this like something that's completely unrelated to that was just try to give people a chance. Like there's a lot of times where um people are just too quick to do things, like like you're just too quick to say no. I definitely try not to do that. If I try to give like the benefit of the doubt to people, and I'm certainly hoping that girls do the same. Like if like really don't get to really know someone or anything like that, you don't really know them. It's like, and you just you didn't really do anything, you didn't really look into the work or ask a reference or anything like that. It's like, well, it wouldn't hurt to do that, um, and try to see if you really wanted to give a chance, because like I think someone else would mention, like like if the girl starts something as opposed to the guy, chances are it's gonna work.
Good, that's good advice. And last but not least, what is your tagline?
Be yourself. Be
It's
yourself.
good.
That's
It's
good.
good.
Yeah.
It's good. Yaakov, thank you so much again for coming onto the podcast. And Sticky Situation Nation, you'll catch me next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.